Discussion agenda number 17, discussion and first reading of proposed new board policy DE ESSER funds is seen in Exhibit K. I think you're getting overtime duty tonight, Ms. Rawls. We're just breaking you in. She does need a stool up there.
She does, and she hasn't been on the job yet for a month. So Ms. Rawls and Dr. Turner have partnered together on Exhibit K. Ms. Rawls, if you'll get us started this evening.
Yes, ma'am. And we have Ashley Story here with us as well, who will be able to assist us with answering any questions. The idea behind this policy is just to provide clarity and aligning with our superintendent's goals in priority 4. I'm learning all these very quickly. As far as communication to the public, what funds are becoming available and what are the plans for those funds. Now, the ESSER 2 funds were related to the law that was passed by the federal government December 27th, 2020. And so that's a federal government grant that is awarded to the state. The state will then pass it through to the local education agency. This policy is not specific to ESSER 2 funds because, as we all know, ESSER 3 is coming now as well. So that this policy will cover any ESSER funds that are provided through the state. The ESSER 2 allocation is estimated to be approximately $6.6 million, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Lovelace.
Putting mask here. This is just housekeeping, but down on information agenda item 20, we have new administrative rule DE-R. Is that intended for a vote at a future meeting, or is that just a new administrative rule?
Yes, sir. Because it's a rule, it was not intended for a future meeting. It's for information. We feel like this couples nicely with the other. Ms. Rawls, anything you'd like to add to that as far as the context of that informational item number 20?
The information item on the administrative rule is actually more specific to ESSER 2, and so it identifies obviously the 15 priorities under ESSER 2. It is not administrative rules, and Mr. Roy, correct me if I'm misspeaking, but administrative rules do not require action by the board. It's for information only. The board would take action on the policy.
I wanted to, I think I've talked to you about this before, but I wanted to talk about guaranteed energy savings performance contracting. And I think you have experience with that at the prior district you were with. I believe, Ms. Rawls, you told me that. I've looked at some information here, and it seems like, over the product life cycle of air conditioning systems and so forth, that we could use the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds for, that we would be able to get a return on investment, a higher return on investment by using the energy savings performance contracting. And I kind of wanted to...
Mr. Cannon might be able to address that a little bit better than I can.
I think we talked about this before, but I wanted to try to make sure that we explore that. And that's why I asked the question, were we going to look at administrative rule and vote on it? Because if we could, I wanted to make a motion that we do explore that.
Mr. Levis, what I'd like to add to this is this rule that you see is, and for the board, this is exhibit behind your informational tab with a memo from Ms. Rawls on this item. So this is the language taken directly from ESSER 2 funds. Although we are anticipating ESSER 3 funds, I don't want us to be premature. We have not had a webinar from the State Department nor information as to what or when to expect. So, of course, when we get that, we'll bring information to the board. And as soon as we receive official information and have training, we'll pass that information along to the board and for the public to hear. So that information we've got captured there. Mr. Cannon, anything you'd like to add? This has definitely been of interest and of conversation between us and the board. We have not identified how we're going to use the funds. We've spoken of it as recently as today in executive staff. So we don't have the numbers necessarily, but we have included with advisories a variety of opinions to make sure we're looking at how we can use these funds holistically, using all available funds. Mr. Cannon, anything you'd like to add that I've omitted? Okay. Ms. Rawls?
Good.
I just want to, I realize that this is not on the action agenda, and I realize I can't make a motion here. But anyway, what I wanted to do was see if we could possibly put it on the action agenda in the future.
With your permission, Mr. Lovett, if it's the will of the board, I'll ask Mr. Cannon to do some research, and I could get that out to the board in one of my weekly updates. And we've gotten to a place of confidence. We can certainly bring that to the board for public information, but I'm hesitant to put anything out there publicly because I'm not sure how reliable that information may be right now. So, Mr. Cannon, if you'll make note of that, and Ms. Strange, for my notes, if you'll make sure that we've assigned that, and my weekly message will go out next Friday, Mr. Cannon. So whatever information you have at that point, I can relay to the board. Ms. Rawls, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gardner?
I'm concerned about this particular board policy because in reading it, all it says is that we're receiving funds and that they're not the same as ESSER 1 or future funds. And then it gives the district the ability to change the administrative rule associated with that information item only. Shouldn't there be a sentence in there that says that the school district the administration has to bring to the board for approval? It should have a sentence in there somewhere that there's an action of the board involved. Otherwise, I don't understand the point of the actual policy.
Ms. Story, may I ask you to come to the microphone? Ashley Story is with Ms. White's firm, White and Story, so I'll ask Ashley if you'll share that with everyone.
Good evening. It's good to be here. I apologize for my voice, but the pollen has already attacked my sinuses times a million, and my doctor has informed me that I'm getting old, and so that is a problem for me. So if any of you have a doctor you would like to recommend, I'm happy to hear that. So we looked at this, and we were talking with Dr. Turner and Ms. Rawls about sort of the best way to approach this, and because there is this upcoming anticipation of additional funding, we wanted the administrative rule to be more specific about that to reflect what we can use that money for, to be transparent with the public, right? And so rather than include that in the initial policy, that would be the easiest way to tweak that later on when we get more guidance about ESSER 3 funds, because we don't know what that's going to look like at this point in time. And also you'll notice that in the general policy, which is before you guys tonight, we didn't include any actual amounts. Those amounts have not been awarded yet, and so there may be an opportunity before you actually finally approve the policy that those amounts will be there, and we could certainly include that. But the point of the AR was to just let the public know through you guys exactly what we can do with the ESSER 2 funds as we have them right now. And when we get that guidance about ESSER 3, we can update that so it's reflective of all the funding that we receive, including reports that we have to give, which would be available to the public anyway. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's my understanding that in the past, and I don't know, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the board has not approved administrative rules, they've approved policy. So the policy is more generic for that reason, because what we wouldn't want to have to come back to you after we get that ESSER 3 information to say, oh, there's an issue with how we've worded the policy about that, so we need to update it to include the ESSER 3. So that's why it's very generic at this point. But when we come back for the second reading, we may have more information, so there may be some tweaks to the general policy as it's written today based on that information that we have at that time. But that goal was that y'all wouldn't be inundated with having to continue to review this policy as we get more funding in the future, so it's more generic for that reason.
And Ms. Story, if I could just point of clarity, since you work with a variety of districts, if you could talk, not naming districts, but by the trends of those that you work with, and then, of course, how unique this is to have this volume of federal funds coming down. But we're trying to recommend to the board's involvement through a policy perspective rather than the involvement of the board to pass budgets of different types. This is an opportunity for the board to have their will heard and their influence of how funds are expended. So if you'll talk through those two pieces.
Absolutely. So this one, I think it's important that we're transparent here about what this money covers, how much it would be at some point, and what we can use it for. And I think that's important for the board. I understand it's a big point for you guys is to make sure that we are transparent with the public about these very things. So that gives the board some onus here and some ownership over what we're doing with the money, that we're getting it, and what we're saying we actually are able to spend it on based on the guidance that we've been given to date. And so I understand this is being taken up by a number of school boards. I actually have another one that's dealing with this very thing tomorrow, and they're looking at a very similar policy so that it's very clear, this is where we're at, we've got this money, it's coming, we're anticipating it, these are the things that we can spend it on, and so our public is aware of where we are with that. I hope that answers that question.
Ms. Gardner?
And I agree with what you said, but I feel like everything you said is not what the policy says. I think it needs to have a statement in it that says that the board is, able to not direct the funds specifically, but have an overview, or to be making sure, like, it just says we're getting money, that's all it says. To me, it doesn't give us any powers. It actually
So-
just gives the power to the administrative rule, which I don't disagree with. It just needs a sentence that says the board has the ability, power, whatever the right wording is in policy speak, to have a say in what the funds are being spent for, or to approve what they're being spent for, something of that nature, because what you said is not actually what's written here. So-
Okay, so perhaps we look at adding a sentence with the purpose here. So we have the purpose, which clarifies the purpose of the ESSER funding and the spending parameters. The district can modify the accompanying administrative rule when we get that information about ESSER funds. And maybe we insert something here that says something along the lines of, and you were really putting me on the spot here. If I were in front of a judge, wow. But I think we could add something here to the effect of that the board, in conjunction with the administration, will review this information as it's brought to the board in compliance with the administrative rule that is attached here too, or something along those lines.
Perfect. I think
Does that
that's good.
help?
Yeah, something like that, yes.
Ms. Gardner, would you like to make the motion and put your
Oh, we have to make a
blueprint
motion,
down?
don't we? Okay.
That would be good.
Oh, great.
You can do it.
Let's see. I'd like to make, so we are making a motion tonight, even though it's
You
on
did want
discussion
one.
agenda?
It is.
It's
you
discussion
want
and
it,
first reading.
But
Oh,
you
and
would like
first
it for-
reading. Oh, okay. Okay.
Do you need a motion, or can she just come back with amended policy?
Well, then they
Either
won't have
one,
a
but I
first
thought
reading.
I thought Dr. Melton wanted a motion.
Our policy requires 2 readings for policies, so
Right.
unless we want to do 3, for us to do 2, and
Yeah,
of course with
we need
ESSER
it
2,
tonight.
we are working on our recommendations of how to use these funds, and
Right.
my recommendation is we have discussion and first reading per policy.
So, Ms. Gardner,
This is going to be rough. Okay, so I make the motion that we approve the discussion and first reading of the proposed new policy, new board policy, DE ESSER funds, as shown in Exhibit K, with the addition of a sentence to give the board a purpose.
is that good
Is that good
with
enough?
Ms. Story? Is that,
I think I know where we're going, and I think we're good, and I will review this tape to say the specific words I just said to you earlier, so we can have that prepared for you for the next reading.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
okay. Is there a second? All right, Ms. Huddle. I have a question as we're talking about, and I may have this mixed up with the third ESSER funds coming, but I am very concerned, and I know a lot of teachers and parents are, about learning loss. And I for sure want to know, I even thought, Dr. Melton, that 20% of it may be, has to be spent on learning loss. And I know Molly Spearman is concerned with that, as superintendents across the country are. So would that be for clarification, would that be in the third issue, or can this be, some of these funds can be for learning loss?
Is actually included with these funds of ESSER 2. And if you all would look at your rule that's included for you this evening, we've captured content from the State Department presentations that we've shared. And what you're asking about is number 12.
You say 10? is-
12.
12 is addressing learning loss among students.
Okay, good.
On this page.
Yes,
So
I see it.
I can tell you, based upon the advisories and the committees that we've had working, we're hearing 3 trends of course, the physical HVAC, air quality, the physical learning and work environment for our students and staff. We're hearing mental health support for our students, staff, and families, and we're hearing what the federal government calls learning loss. I'm not going to say learning loss because our teachers are working hard and our families that are engaged are being very successful, but by federal definition, it is defined as learning loss. So a percentage, those are the top 3 that we've consistently heard that we're working on recommendations of how to use the allocations. And we are not going to have to seek approval from the department, but instead we'll be submitting our plan as to how we plan to spend these funds.
Thank you. And then, since you wanted since this is first reading, and like you said, we would have had to have 3 if we hadn't had a motion tonight. So thank you. Ms.
No,
Gardner.
we've had a first and second
Good.
discussion.
That's great. All right, so anything else on that? And we will vote on the motion after the no more discussion. All those in favor? And that is 7-0. So we are on 18, discussion of parameters for the 2022 general fund.
Ms.
Here
Rawls,
she
I'd like to
comes.
invite you to the podium.
The
And
Marty
this
Rawls Show.
presentation is found this evening and in your board packet. Ms. Rawls,
Yes, ma'am. Here we go. We're bringing the presentation up now. This is the capital. Do we have the one for the general fund? There we go. Awesome. All right, so here we are projecting for 2021, 2022 general fund budget. This is for information only, and we just wanted to go over some of the highlights that we're seeing already. To recap what you all did last year, in October, the board approved an amendment outlining some reduction in expenditures based on reduction in revenue. There was some changes in the operational balance that was used, so the new budgeted revenues and expenditures were $196,524,672. The operating millage for 2020, 2021 was 246.10. That was using the rollback, that was using the rollback with the reassessment for the 2020-2021 school year. I'll get my dates right. So the millage rate for this school year is 246.10 for operating millage. And just as a reminder, operating millage is only on investment property. It is not on owner-occupied 4% property. This is where we talked about the general fund unassigned revenues or unassigned fund balance. As of June 30th, that was the fund balance, the $43 million that you see there, and based on the 18% requirement outlined in board policy DFAB, the board approved using the $3 million for the appreciation bonus. This all happened in December of last year. So here's what we know as of right now. The House Ways and Means Committee came out with their budget proposal for the House floor. They started debate, as I understood, they were to start today. Sat on the floor of the House members last week. So part of the House Ways and Means budget is the $15 million increase for reoccurring base student costs, moving it to $2,500. Currently, it is at $2,489, so it's an $11 increase in base student cost. EIA recurring increase of $665,000, and EIA non-recurring of $17 million. So you see some of the highlights there for the EIA increases. And their version of the general fund or General Assembly budget did include a step for next year. So they're not only including the step, they approved the step for this school year, but they are also including a step for next school year. Just giving you somewhat of some dates to remember. What you see in italics are things that happen at the General Assembly. What you see in regular font are things that we will do here at the district. Just some dates for you to have for your calendar. Wanted to share with you some data points of interest. For this school year, all of the funds that we received are based on our percentage of the state weighted pupil units. So for when we started the school year, weighted pupil units were based on the 994,000. As of the 45th day, that had dropped to 965,000 statewide. You can see the 2489 was the implied base student cost for this school year. The estimates for next school year are going to increase the weighted pupil units to 990,000. The anticipation is to get some of our students back. So the more students we get back, the higher the weighted pupil units go. And that all of the funding that they're projecting right now is based on the $2,500 base student cost as implied. Here's some budget considerations. We discussed earlier, House 3609 was passed, funding the step for teachers for this school year. Next year's budget will include the step increase for teachers. It will also include a 1% increase. They have unfrozen the hold on the retirement increase. That will be the employer portion, taking it from 21.81 to 22.81. Also, in the time that we created this PowerPoint and today, found out that the PIBA is expecting a 0.8% increase in employer health costs. So there will be, it's a small amount, it's not anything compared to what the retirement increase will be, but it will be an increased cost to the district. One of the things that we have to consider is instructional staff members for Piney Woods. What does that look like to staff another school? And that's some of the things, obviously, Dr. Turner and her staff are working on. And how does that all correlate with the board policies regarding to teacher-student ratios? So all these are part of budget considerations, and all of the teachers obviously represent individuals in a classroom, but to me, they represent the dollars that it costs to pay their salaries and the fringe associated with those salaries. Operating millage increase, you know that it is legislative, there is a legislative millage cap that is calculated each year. Usually by this time, we have the data to calculate that, but the State Office of Revenue and Fiscal Affairs is running a little bit late on getting us the population growth number. I was told by Lisa Jolliffe in their office the other day, it's going to be May before that information is known. The CPI is the 1.23. That is one published figure that we have. We discussed that the current operating millage rate is 246.10. I did want to bring your attention to the ability for the board to decide if they want to use look-back millage. And I'm not sure if you all have discussed this in the past, but according to the section of Code of Laws, there is a look-back period of 3 years. So any millage cap that has not been used in the past 3 fiscal years may be imposed in addition to the cap for this year. So just making sure you all know your options. The look-back millage for the last 3 fiscal years is the 22.60 mils. So if you chose, you could increase legislatively, you could increase the millage rate by the 22.60 mils plus any allowable millage increase cap based on the calculation for this year. And that is my presentation to date, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. I entertain any questions? Ms. Huddle?
It looked like statewide, we lost like 3% of our students, and I think we were in about that same range, about 500. So that is right.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And this might be a question for Dr. Milton. Roughly when do we think we'll have a good idea of how many students we might get back from that?
I thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Huddle. This is a recruitment to anyone that may be listening in or that may know of students and families that look for a different option for this year. We, of course, as we look ahead to next year, we have 5 as an option and then on-site instruction. Registration happens every day, so we are receiving some students back. We've heard some indication that some are likely to return, but until we have records, we're not able to count that student towards that number. So I hope that families are listening in or that maybe neighbors help us recruit children back. We want them back, we need them back, and we hope that we report our numbers to the board next time that we would have an increase of students who've chosen to return to School District 5. Dr. Harris, anything you'd like to say with confidence this evening that you could predict or project?
Confidence, no.
Okay.
We just anticipate.
Continue to monitor.
We'll be
Thank you, Dr.
celebrating
Harris.
their return.
Yes.
We're hoping. Thank you, Dr. Milton. Marty, I had one question. Is the step increase 2% thereabout for teachers?
It's a good average, yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Would there be anyone that would like to entertain number 19, which is to adjourn? Oh, you may ask. I'm sorry.
This will be real quick. Do you know how much a mill is worth in this district?
I can get that information for you. I was looking, when in the break, somebody asked what a debt service mill was worth. It's approximately $520,000 for a debt service mill. An operating mill, I do not have that number in front of me. If I don't even really want to guesstimate
No,
that. I would rather get you a number
I wouldn't
later.
want you to do that, but anyway.
If you
okay.
would get that to me, then I can forward that
Yes,
to the
ma'am.
board in my correspondence to them, or as soon as you can get it available with accuracy.
Yes, ma'am.
And Ms. Hammond, if I may, I appreciate the advocacy of this board of how you all stay in touch with our state leaders, and hopefully this presentation will better prepare you for how to advocate for public education. Anyone that may be listening tonight, we always encourage advocacy so that those that we elect to serve at the state level can hear request and interest of us here locally for our children and for our staff's success.
Thank you. Ms. Hines?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? There is a second from Ms. Gardner. No discussion, seeing none. All those in favor of adjournment? And we really do thank you, Ms. Rawls, for your Ms. Rawls show. We wanted you to feel welcome.